My stepfather said I'd never amount to anything without the family money, so I bought the family business and fired him. I was 16 when Richard married my mom and moved us into his mansion. He owned Hartwell Construction, the biggest contracting company in 3 counties. At family dinners, he'd lean back in his leather chair, swirling his whiskey, talking about legacy and bloodlines like some kind of king. This business stays in the family, he'd announce, pointing his glass at Kevin. Real family. The message was crystal clear. I was a real family. My biological father had died when I was 8. Mom struggled for years before meeting Richard at her grief support group. At first, he seemed like a savior, paying off our debts, moving us out of our cramped apartment into a sprawling estate. But the honeymoon phase ended quickly when I graduated high school. With a 4.2 GPA, Richard offered me a job in the warehouse, minimum wage, loading trucks at 5 o'clock a.m. And while his biological son Kevin got the corner office, despite barely passing community college. You should be grateful, Richard said when I asked about advancement opportunities. Without our name, you're nothing. No connections, no money, no future. At least I'm giving you honest work. Kevin smirked from behind his desk, feet up, playing games on his computer. That night, I made a decision that would consume the next 12 years of my life. I enlisted in the Army Corps of Engineers the following Monday. Spent 4 years learning construction from the ground up. While Kevin partied through college on daddy's dime, I was building bridges in Afghanistan, learning real leadership under pressure. Used my GI Bill for civil engineering at State. Graduated summa cum laude while working graveyard shifts at Morrison and Associates. Richard's biggest competitor. Richard laughed when he heard about my degree. Playing in the dirt won't make you family, boy. By 25, I was running major projects for Morrison. By 30, I was partner specializing in fixing the messes Hartwell Construction left behind. Every bid, we won every contract we stole. I thought of Richard's words last month. Richard had a massive heart attack during a board meeting. While he recovered, Kevin ran the company straight into the ground. 3 major lawsuits, 2 OSHA safety violations, and a sexual harassment claim that made the local news. Their biggest investor, Henderson Development, pulled out completely. The bank called in their loans. Hartwell Construction was hemorrhaging money faster than a burst pipeline. That's when I made my move. I've been quietly courting their clients for years, building relationships, proving our superior work quality. When I offered to buy Hartwell Construction for 60 cents on the dollar, the desperate board didn't hesitate. The closing was yesterday. Today was my first day as CEO. I walked through the front doors at exactly 8 o'clock a.m. pass the lobby where my high school photo still wasn't displayed with the other family pictures, just Richard, Kevin, and Richard's father, who'd started the company. Richard's assistant, Sarah, looked confused when she saw me in a 3-piece suit. He's in his office, she said nervously, but he's not expecting any appointments this early. Oh, he's expecting me, I said, straightening my tie and checking my watch. He just doesn't know it yet. I pushed open his office doors without knocking. Richard sat behind his massive oak desk, the same one where he'd signed my minimum wage paperwork 16 years ago. He looked up, annoyed and pale from his recent hospital stay. What the hell are you doing here? I smiled and placed the ownership papers directly on top of his morning coffee. Cleaning house. Richard's face went through several emotions as he read: confusion, disbelief, then slow burning rage that made his neck veins bulge like ropes. This is impossible, he muttered, flipping through pages with shaking hands. The board would never sell to some nobody. The board voted unanimously. I interrupted, settling into the chair across from him like I belonged there. Turns out they weren't thrilled about Kevin's sexual harassment lawsuit or the 3 OSHA violations that nearly shut down the Riverside project. Funny how liability insurance premiums skyrocket when you ignore safety protocols. His face turned the color of raw beef. You manipulative little, you orchestrated this whole thing for 16 years. I confirmed, crossing my legs casually. Ever since you told me I'd never amount to anything without your precious family name. Richard stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and slammed against the window. This company has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather started it with his bare hands during the Depression. You can't just waltz in here and actually I did, and now I need to discuss your severance package. The word severance hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You're firing me, effective immediately. I pulled out a prepared manila envelope, sliding it across the desk. 2 weeks pay as required by state law. Your company car keys, building access card, company credit card, and corporate American Express need to be surrendered before you leave today. For a moment I genuinely thought he might have another heart attack. His left hand clutched his chest, and his breathing became labored and wheezy. 16 years, he wheezed, leaning heavily on the desk. 16 years, I put a roof over your ungrateful head, fed you, clothed you, gave you opportunities you never would have had, and reminded me every single day that I wasn't really family. I said, keeping my voice steady and professional, that I was nothing without your name, that I should be grateful for scraps. The office door burst open, and Kevin stumbled in, looking like he'd been up all night drinking. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and he reeked of alcohol and cheap perfume. Dad, what's going on? Security called and said. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me sitting in the client chair like I owned the place, which technically I did. Now, what's he doing here? Kevin demanded, pointing at me with a shaky finger. Explaining your severance package, I said pleasantly, pulling out a second envelope. 2 weeks, pay same as your father. Company property needs to be returned by 5 o'clock p.m. Today, Kevin's bloodshot eyes darted between me and Richard's severance. What the hell is he talking about? Show him the papers, I told Richard. Kevin snatched the ownership documents, his lips moving as he struggled to read the legal language. I watched comprehension dawn on his face like a slow-motion train wreck. This can't be legal, he said, his voice cracking. You can't just steal our company. I didn't steal anything, I purchased it through proper legal channels after your mismanagement drove it to the brink of bankruptcy. Mismanagement? Kevin's voice shot up an octave. I've been working here for 3 years. I cut him off, during which time you've been sued twice for sexual harassment, cited for safety violations that cost the company $180,000 in fines, and lost 3 major contracts due to missed deadlines and substandard work. Those lawsuits were, Kevin snarled, stepping closer to my chair. That secretary was asking for it, wearing those tight skirts, bending over my desk. Stop talking, Richard said, quickly shooting his son a warning. Look, Kevin, just stop talking right now. But Kevin was on a roll, alcohol loosening his tongue. You think you're so smart stealing our company, but you'll run it into the ground. Within a year, you're not real family. You never were. You're just some loser. My dad felt sorry, for the words hung in the air like smoke. Even Richard looked uncomfortable. Now you're absolutely right, I said calmly, standing up and straightening my jacket. I'm not real family. Real family covers for each other's crimes. Real family looks the other way. When employees get sexually assaulted, real family values bloodlines over competence. I walk closer to Kevin, close enough to smell the stale alcohol on his breath. But I am real competition, and I've been beating you at that for years. The office door opened again, and 2 professional security guards entered, not Richard's usual rental cops, but real professionals I'd hired that morning. Gentlemen, I said to the guards, please escort these 2 off the property. They're no longer employed here, and need to collect their personal belongings under supervision. Kevin started to argue, but one of the guards, a former Marine, who looked like he could bench press a truck, stepped forward with his hands clasped behind his back. Sir, we can do this the easy way, or the hard way, your choice. Richard put a restraining hand on Kevin's arm. Let's go, son, we're done here. As they reached the door, Richard turned back one last time. His face had aged 10 years in the past hour. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is, I replied, settling into his chair. My chair now. It's been over for years. You just didn't know it yet. After they left, I called Sarah into the office. Sarah, I need you to schedule an all-hands meeting for 10 o'clock a.m. in the main conference room. Everyone, office staff, foreman, project managers, even the crew leads, if they can get here from job sites. She nodded eagerly. In 20 years of working for Richard, she'd never been asked for input or treated with basic respect. Should I order coffee and donuts? She asked hesitantly. Absolutely, this is going to be a long meeting, and we have a lot to discuss by 10 o'clock a.m. The conference room was packed. Some people stood along the walls because we'd run out of chairs. Foreman, still covered in concrete dust, sat next to office administrators and press shirts. I'd never seen the entire company in one room before. Some of you have been here longer than I've been alive. I began looking around the room at faces both familiar and new. You've built this company with your sweat, skill, and dedication. Under new management, that work will finally be valued and rewarded properly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I've purchased Hartwell Construction. Yes, Richard and Kevin are no longer with the company. And yes, this means significant changes are coming. Mike Rodriguez, the crane operator Richard had threatened to fire for questioning unsafe practices, raised his hand. What about the projects Kevin screwed up? The Henderson job is a complete nightmare. We're 3 weeks behind schedule, and the foundation work has to be completely redone. I reviewed all active projects, I said, pulling up a presentation on the wall-mounted screen. Henderson will be completed correctly, even if it takes longer and costs more initially. Our reputation depends on delivering quality work, not cutting corners to boost short-term profits. I clicked to the next slide, showing a detailed breakdown of every active project, their current status, and proposed remedies. The Riverside project will undergo complete environmental remediation. Yes, it'll cost us $200,000. But it's better than the federal investigation. We were heading for. Tom Wilson, a foreman who'd been with the company for 15 years, spoke up. What about the rest of us? Are there going to be layoffs? No layoffs for performance-related reasons. In fact, I'm implementing immediate changes that will benefit everyone in this room. I clicked to the next slide. New company policies and benefits effective immediately. Profit sharing for all employees after 6 months of employment, safety bonuses for accident. Free projects, educational reimbursement for anyone wanting to improve their skills, promotion based on merit and performance, not family connections. The room buzzed with excitement. These were benefits they'd never dreamed of under Richard's leadership. Additionally, we're implementing a zero-tolerance policy for sexual harassment, discrimination, and workplace bullying. Everyone will undergo professional training, including management, especially management. I looked directly at several of the older foremen who'd been part of the boys' club culture. We're also establishing an anonymous reporting system for safety violations and workplace issues. No one should ever fear retaliation for raising Legitimate concerns. Sarah raised her hand. What about administrative changes, personnel? You keep your job, Sarah. In fact, you're getting a significant raise. And a new title, executive assistant to the CEO. Your institutional knowledge is invaluable. The relief on her face was visible from across the room. I know change can be scary, I continued. But I've spent 12 years preparing for this moment. I've seen how successful companies operate, how they treat their employees, and how they build lasting relationships with clients. Danny Martinez, one of the younger workers, called out, what about the sexual harassment stuff? Are you going to clean house there too? Anyone with substantiated complaints in their personnel file will undergo mandatory retraining. Anyone with multiple violations will be terminated. We're building a workplace where everyone can do their job without fear or harassment. The meeting lasted 2 hours. People asked questions about everything from vacation policies to equipment upgrades. For the first time in company history, employees felt heard as the crowd dispersed. Mike Rodriguez approached me. I just want to say thank you, Richard. Would have fired me last month for complaining about the unsafe scaffold on the Henderson project. 3 guys could have been seriously hurt. That's exactly why those reports are important. I said safety isn't negotiable. Over the next weeks, word spread through the construction industry like wildfire. Hartwell Construction had new leadership, new standards, and new integrity. 3 major developers who'd stopped using Richard's company called. Within the first month, Henderson Development, ironically the investor who'd pulled out, wanted to discuss a new project. We heard about the changes. Their project manager explained during our meeting the commitment to quality and safety. That's the kind of partner we want. The local newspaper ran a front page story. Family business gets fresh start under new leadership. They interviewed employees who praised the improved workplace culture and transparent management style. It's like working for a completely different company. Sarah told the reporter, we actually have a voice now. The article included a photo of me standing in front of the company headquarters with a group of employees. Everyone was smiling, something that had been rare under Richard's reign. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Richard tried to start his own competing construction firm, calling it Heritage Construction, and marketing himself as an experienced industry veteran. But no bank would finance him. The OSHA violations, EPA investigation, and sexual harassment lawsuits had made him toxic to lenders. He also tried to recruit former Hartwell employees, promising them higher wages and a real family atmosphere. Only 2 people left, both friends of Kevin's who'd been part of the workplace harassment problem. Kevin bounced between jobs for months, unable to explain the gap in his resume. Without admitting he'd been fired from his own family's company, finally he took a position as an assistant project manager at a small firm in Florida, far from anyone who knew his history. Mom called me 3 weeks after the takeover. Richard says you humiliated him in front of the entire company, that you planned this revenge for years. I planned to succeed for years. I corrected. Richard's humiliation was his own doing. He's your stepfather. He raised you, gave you opportunities. He housed me and made sure I knew I wasn't really family every single day. For 16 years, I said there's a difference between raising someone and tolerating their presence. Mom was quiet for a long moment. I could hear Richard in the background, probably coaching her on what to say. He's talking about contesting a sale. Says, you manipulated the board, used inside information. The board made a business decision based on financial performance and legal liability. If Richard wants to contest it in court, that's his choice. But he should know I've documented every safety violation, every harassment complaint, every corner. He cut to boost profits. This is tearing our family apart. That stung more than I expected. Despite everything, Mom had always been caught in the middle, trying to keep peace between Richard and me. No, Mom. Richard tore our family apart 16 years ago when he decided I wasn't good enough to be part of it. I just stopped pretending otherwise. 6 months later, Hartwell Construction had its best quarter in 5 years. The Henderson project finished early and $50,000 under budget. 3 more major contracts were signed, including a $2.3 million municipal building project. I hired Jessica Chun as head of HR, a woman with extensive experience in workplace safety and equality. Sexual harassment training became mandatory for all employees, from entry-level workers to senior management. Safety violations dropped to 0. Employee turnover fell to the lowest rate in company history. The anonymous reporting system resulted in several process improvements, and 1 termination for theft. Morale was so high that employees voted to give me a plaque that read, to the boss who listens. It sits on my desk. Where Richard's picture of Kevin used to be. The success attracted attention from industry publications. Construction Today ran a feature article titled, How New Leadership Transformed a Struggling Family Business. They highlighted our safety record, employee satisfaction, and rapid financial turnaround. The reporter asked about my background and the transition from the previous management. Change is never easy, I said diplomatically, but sometimes it's necessary for growth and improvement. Richard was quoted in the same article, though his comments were relegated to a small sidebar. I built that company from nothing, he said. Some People don't appreciate family loyalty or tradition. The contrast was stark. My interview focused on employee safety and future growth. His was bitter complaints about the past year after the takeover. I received an unexpected visitor. Maria Santos, a recent civil engineering graduate, sat in my office with her resume and a determined expression. I heard you judge people by their work, not their connections, she said. Every other company I've applied to wants to know who my father is or whether I'm planning to get married and have kids. I hired her as a project engineer. On her first day, I took her to the Riverside project, the one we'd remediated properly despite the cost. This is what we do here, I told her as we stood in the construction trailer looking at blueprints spread across the table. We build things that last. We do it safely. We do it right. She nodded eagerly, hard hat gleaming in the fluorescent light. And Maria, I added, in this company, family is what you make it, not what you're born into. Maria proved to be exceptional. Within 6 months, she was leading her own small projects. Within a year, she was managing major construction phases. Her attention to detail and safety-first approach impressed clients and colleagues alike. The Henderson Development Project became a showcase for our new approach. When completed, it was featured in Architectural Digest as an example of sustainable construction practices. The safety record was perfect. Not a single reportable incident over 8 months of construction. Henderson CEO Patricia Wells called me personally to discuss future projects. We've worked with dozens of contractors over the years, she said. Your team's professionalism and attention to detail is exceptional. We'd like to discuss an exclusive partnership for our next development phase. That contract was worth $15 million over 3 years, but success brought new challenges. Our rapid growth required hiring additional staff and expanding our equipment fleet. I needed experienced project managers who could maintain our standards while handling larger, more complex projects. That's when I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I reached out to some of Richard's former competitors, contractors who'd lost business to Hartwell's corner-cutting practices. Over the years, several experienced professionals were eager to join a company with our reputation for integrity. James Patterson, a project manager who'd been blacklisted by Richard for refusing to falsify inspection reports, became our director of quality control. I never thought I'd work for Hartwell Construction, he admitted during his interview. But what you've built here isn't the same company. Within 2 years, we'd grown from 85 employees to 150. The company culture remained strong because we hired people who shared our values, not just our need for workers. Employee satisfaction surveys consistently rated us among the top construction companies in the region. Safety awards lined the conference room walls. Client retention was 95%. Richard's attempts to compete grew increasingly desperate. Heritage Construction bid unrealistically low on several projects, trying to undercut our prices. When they inevitably went over budget, clients came to us to finish the work properly. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the industry. We were cleaning up Richard's messes again, just like the old days at Morrison and Associates. One autumn afternoon, Kevin showed up at our office unannounced. Security called me before letting him into the building. I found him in the lobby looking older and worn down. His clothes were rumpled, and he'd lost weight in an unhealthy way. I need a job, he said without preamble. Kevin, I know what you're thinking, but I've changed the lawsuit in Florida. The drinking, I went to rehab. I've been sober for 4 months. I studied his face, looking for signs of the entitled, aggressive person he'd been. He seemed genuinely different, humbled. Even what happened in Florida, same thing that happened here. Sexual harassment complaint, fired for cause. But this time, I didn't have daddy to protect me. I had to face what I'd become. He pulled out his phone, showing me pictures of a therapist certificate and AA attendance records. I'm not asking for special treatment. Start me in the warehouse, minimum wage. I just need a chance to prove I can change. It was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made. Every rational part of my brain said to refuse. Kevin had been part of the toxic culture that had nearly destroyed the company. But looking at him, really looking, I saw something I'd never seen before: humility. Genuine remorse. You report to Maria Santos, I said. Finally, she's running our new equipment maintenance program. Any problems, any harassment, any attitude issues, any relapse, and you're gone permanently. Kevin nodded rapidly. I understand. Thank you for the chance. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 6 months, if you're still here and doing good work. Kevin's return shocked everyone, including our employees. Several people expressed concerns remembering his previous behavior. I addressed it in a company-wide meeting. We're giving Kevin a probationary opportunity to prove he's changed. If anyone experiences harassment or inappropriate behavior, report it immediately. Zero tolerance means zero tolerance. Kevin started in the equipment yard, maintaining trucks and machinery. He showed up early, stayed late, and kept his head down. No one reported any problems. After 3 months, Maria came to my office. I hate to admit this, but Kevin's doing good work. He's thorough, reliable, and respectful to everyone on the team. Surprised, honestly, yes, I was expecting him to revert to his old behavior once the novelty wore off, but he seems genuinely committed to changing. 6 months later, Kevin had earned a small promotion to equipment coordinator. He'd also started attending company safety meetings and contributing useful suggestions. The real test came during our annual holiday party. In the past, these events had been problematic: too much drinking, inappropriate behavior, several incidents that HR had to handle under new management. We'd restructured the Party Professional Venue Limited Alcohol Families. Welcome. Kevin attended alone, nursing a single soda water all evening. When Maria's daughter asked him about the big trucks in our equipment yard, Kevin spent 20 minutes patiently explaining how excavators work, letting her sit in the driver's seat while her mother took pictures. Thank you, Maria told me later, for giving him the chance to become a better person 3 years. After taking over the company, I received a call that changed everything. This is Patricia Wells from Henderson Development. We'd like to discuss something significant with you. When I arrived at her office, I found not just Patricia, but representatives from 3 other major development companies. We've been talking. Patricia began about the possibility of a regional partnership, exclusive contracts for all our projects over the next 5 years. The numbers they presented were staggering: $50 million in guaranteed work with potential for much more if performance targets were met. Why us? I asked. Because you've proven that integrity and profitability aren't mutually exclusive, said Michael Torres from Torres Development. Every project on time, on budget, 0 safety incidents. That's worth a premium to us. The partnership would require expanding to nearly 300 employees and opening satellite offices in 2 neighboring states. It was exactly the kind of growth I dreamed about during those early years in the Army, learning my trade while Richard disparaged my ambitions. But the expansion also meant I needed someone I could trust completely to help manage operations, someone who understood the company culture and shared our values. I promoted Maria to Vice President of Operations at 28. She became the youngest VP in the company's history. Kevin, now a reliable equipment manager, was among the first to congratulate her. She earned it, he told me after the announcement, and honestly, seeing her succeed makes me proud to work here. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman Richard's generation had tried to exclude was now helping lead the company into its most successful era. Year 4 brought new challenges. The rapid expansion strained our systems and culture. Some of the new hires in the satellite offices didn't fully embrace our safety first, integrity focused approach. We had our first major incident in 3 years. A worker fell from scaffolding at the Riverside Phase 2 project, suffering a broken leg. The investigation revealed that proper safety protocols hadn't been followed. I flew to the satellite office the next day and shut down all operations until every worker completed refresher safety training. The delay cost us $75,000, but it sent a clear message about our priorities. We don't compromise on safety. I told the assembled crews, I don't care about deadlines or budget pressures. Everyone goes home healthy every day. The incident also revealed gaps in our management structure. The satellite office supervisors were experienced, but they hadn't fully internalized our culture. I instituted quarterly culture assessments and mandatory leadership rotations between offices. Every supervisor spent at least 1 month per year at headquarters working directly with our core team. The investment paid off. By year 5, all 3 offices operated with consistent standards and culture. Safety incidents remained near 0. Employee satisfaction stayed high across all locations, but success brought unexpected personal challenges. Mom called one evening. Her voice strained. Richard's in the hospital. The doctors say it's pancreatic cancer stage. Where the news hit harder than I expected. Despite everything, I'd never wished for Richard to suffer. How long? I asked. Weeks, maybe a month. He's asking for you. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and despair. Richard looked frail in the narrow bed attached to machines that beeped and hummed. The proud, domineering man who'd controlled my adolescence was gone, replaced by someone who looked fragile and scared. I didn't think you'd come, he said when I entered the room. Mom asked me to. We sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Richard spoke. I was wrong about you about a lot of things. Richard, let me finish. I was threatened by you from the beginning. Smart kid, motivated, reminded me of myself at that age. But you weren't my blood, and I couldn't handle the idea that you might be better than Kevin. He coughed a harsh sound that seemed to hurt. I spent 16 years trying to keep you small because I was afraid you'd eclipse my son. Turns out that's exactly what happened. Anyway, Kevin's doing well now. I said. He's changed, really changed. Richard's eyes widened. You hired him, gave him a chance to prove he'd grown up. He earned his place on the team. After everything he did, everything I did. People can change if they want it badly enough. Kevin wanted to you. I'm not sure you ever did. Richard was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling tiles. The company looks good, really good, better than I ever managed. We've been lucky. Good people, good projects. Luck. He laughed bitter. Sandy turned a failing business into a regional powerhouse in 5 years. That's not luck, that's vision and leadership. He turned to look at me directly. I'm proud of what you've built, proud of who you became. I should have said that years ago, Richard, and I'm sorry for all of it, for making you feel unwelcome in your own home, for telling you that you'd never amount to anything, for wasting 16 years being afraid of my own stepson. I felt tears starting and blinked back. I forgive you, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. Richard died. 2 weeks later, Kevin flew back for the funeral, taking bereavement leave from his job with us. The service was small family, a few old business associates, some employees from the Heritage Construction days. I gave one of the eulogies, talking about Richard's role in founding the modern Hartwell Construction, carefully avoiding the darker chapters of our Relationship after the service, Kevin approached me. Thank you for what you said, and for everything, giving me a job, a chance to prove I'd changed. I know it wasn't easy. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're willing to work for a dad. Was right, you know, you became everything. He was afraid you'd become everything. He wished he could be 6 months. After Richard's death, Henderson Development offered us our biggest project, yet a $25 million mixed-use development that would anchor downtown revitalization efforts. The contract signing was held in the same conference room where Richard had first offered me that minimum wage warehouse job 16 years earlier. Standing at the head of the table, surrounded by employees who trusted me and clients who respected our work, I thought about the scared teenager who'd enlisted in the army rather than accept Richard's limitations. That kid could never have imagined this moment. Leading a company of 300 people partnered with the biggest developers in the region, financially secure beyond anything Richard had ever achieved. But more than the money or prestige, I was proud of the culture we'd built, a workplace where Maria could rise to VP based on talent, where Kevin could redeem himself through hard work, where safety and integrity weren't negotiable. As I signed the contract, I glanced at the wall where Richard's portrait had once hung. In its place was a group photo from our latest safety awards ceremony, 150 smiling faces representing the real heart of Hartwell Construction. After the clients left, I found myself alone in the conference room, looking out at the construction yard where I had once loaded trucks for minimum wage. Sarah knocked on the door. Framed new business cards arrived. She said, handed me a box. Thought you might want to see them. I opened the box and pulled out a card. Michael Hartwell, Chief Executive Officer, Hartwell Construction, building excellence together. For the first time, my last name was printed on a Hartwell Construction business card, not because I'd married into the family or inherited the position, but because I'd earned it. That evening, I called Mom. The funeral was beautiful. She said Richard would have been pleased. How are you doing? Really better than I expected. The house feels empty, but peaceful for the first time in years. Peaceful. What will you do now? I was thinking about traveling, maybe visiting you at the office, seeing what you've built. I like that, Michael. Yeah, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of the man you became and the business you've built. After hanging up, I walked through the office one more time before heading home. The desks were empty, computers sleeping, but evidence of our success was everywhere. Project photos lined the walls, safety awards filled display cases, employee recognition certificates covered an entire bulletin board in my office. I sat at the desk that had once been Richard's throne of power. The ownership papers that had started this journey were framed on the wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how far we'd all come. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities to prove that success built on integrity and respect was more lasting than anything achieved through fear and favoritism. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Richard had been wrong about everything that mattered. I'd amounted to something without the family money. I'd built something better than he ever imagined, and I'd done it by becoming exactly the kind of leader I'd wished for when I was 16 and loading trucks at 5 o'clock a.m. Dreaming of something better. The company that had once been Richard's legacy was now something entirely different, a place where talent was rewarded, safety was paramount, and family was defined by commitment and respect rather than bloodlines. Richard said I'd never amount to anything without the family money. He was wrong. I'd amounted to everything because I'd learned to build my own family, my own legacy, and my own definition of success, and that more than any dollar amount or business achievement was worth everything I'd sacrificed to get.